Review it! 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 Review it!
Okay. Now that the latest take on Stephen King's classic horror story has been out for a good long while, I bet most of you have been wondering what I thought about the new It. But before I get a chance to answer, a little backstory. The original novel was published in 1986 and focused primarily on 7 small-town kids who discover an ancient evil being that appears every 27 years to feast off the fears and flesh of young children, mostly taking on the form of a creepy-looking clown that goes by the name of Pennywise. I've never read the book myself, mostly due to its enormous length. Seriously, look at this thing, it's huge. So my only familiarity with the story was with the 1990 miniseries of the same name. I figured this is how most people were first introduced, and the series soon became an instantly recognizable staple for why most kids were scared of clowns, thanks in due part to Tim Curry's iconically over-the-top performance as Pennywise.
Oh yes. Beep, beep, Richie. Stay slow. Kiss me, fat boy.
However, most fans of King's original book were not particularly pleased with such a watered-down treatment and held out hope for the longest period of time for an even better, more faithful adaptation to be made down the line. The first official talks of a new version didn't come until somewhere between 2009 and 2012, when True Detective's Cary Fukunaga was attached to co-write and direct a 2-part big-screen adaptation for New Line Cinema, with the first film focusing on the main characters as kids and as adults in the following film. However, the project didn't gain traction until after Fukunaga left due to creative differences, leaving directing duties towards Andy Muschietti, whose previous credit includes the very underrated supernatural thriller Mama. So now that It has finally arrived in theaters, did the movie even live up to the hype? Well, I certainly thought so, as not only did it make up for this past summer's painfully bad King outing, The Dark Tower, it's also the most fun I had watching a horror movie this year. One of the main takeaways I got from the film was the infectious camaraderie within the Losers Club, which benefited greatly by having such talented young actors involved. Everyone honestly did a great job, but the ones that stole the spotlight the most were Eddie the Germaphobe, played by Jack Dylan Grazer, and the very, very foul-mouthed Richie, played by Finn Wolfhard, who really is showing off a lot of range here, especially if you've seen him in Stranger Things. Both of these kids had the best lines and back and forth bantering that had me laughing out loud on a number of occasions, and it really helped solidify the Stand By Me / Goonies vibe that this movie was going for. The creepy adults and sadistic bully characters are still your typical standard Stephen King tropes we've seen for the past few decades now, but at least here they're given just a smidge of backstory to help us understand why they're all such complete psychopaths, and at times they do come across as a bit more frightening than Pennywise himself. Speaking of which, Bill Skarsgård, brother of Alexander and son of Stellan, did an outstanding job of making the role of the murderous dancing clown entirely his own. Sure, the CGI enhancements can get a little overbearing at times, but what makes his performance so chilling and memorable is the way he's able to balance between being goofy and serious with ease, and how he plays up the role almost like a creature trapped inside a skin suit rather than some random clown living in the sewer. And while I'll always have a soft spot for Tim Curry's performance, Skarsgård comes much closer to giving me the right kind of nightmare fuel. I also liked the look of the film, how it delved into childhood grief and isolation, and I greatly admired the studio's decision to not hold back when it came time to depict heavy, gruesome violence towards children, which is something you don't normally see in most mainstream horror films. But hey, if you thought seeing a kid getting his arm torn off was disturbing enough, wait until you see Mother. Overall, I really love this new version of It. It kept me engaged throughout its surprisingly brisk 2-hour and 15-minute runtime with its wicked sense of humor, frightening imagery, and worthwhile performances. It's also one of the few horror films we've gotten lately that dedicated most of its time towards story and characters rather than cheap, lousy jump scares. And for that, It gets a 9 out of 10. Now, before we go... Anyway, before we go, let me introduce to you all a brand new segment for the show that I like to call Shortcut Reviews. This is where I get to look back on the films I missed out on reviewing for the past few weeks, all within a very short period of time. Kinda like my summer movie recaps, but hopefully a lot shorter. Right now we're gonna look at 3 films I missed my window opportunity on, starting with the aforementioned controversy magnet, Mother, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem as a married couple living in a secluded home whose lives take quite a sharp up turn not long after inviting complete random strangers. This movie had everyone split down the middle, between those who liked it okay and those who absolutely despised its very existence. I, on the other hand, happen to fall under the category of those who really got into this maddening tale of religious allegories, environmental themes, and tragic relationships between obsessed artists and their neglected muses. It's been growing on me ever since I first saw it, and there's a good chance it might make it on my best of the year list should I ever get around to a second viewing. But for now, it's an 8.5 out of 10 for me. Next up is KINGSMAN: The Golden Circle, one of the many sequels I was eagerly awaiting this year, but one that sadly came up a bit short on expectations. The reasons why I felt this way was mostly due to its egregiously long running time, the repetitive nature of both action set pieces and annoying callbacks to the original film, the complete disregard for one key character in favor of bringing back a dead one, which now kinda lessens any sort of emotional impact for any major death scene moving forward, and of course, Sir Elton John. Is it still a fun movie overall despite my criticisms? Sure, but one I really wish aimed a lot higher than a 6 out of 10. And lastly, we have American Made, starring Tom Cruise as a hothead airline pilot who, during the late 70s to early 80s, made a shitload of money for simultaneously running shady errands for the CIA and smuggling in drugs for the cartel. Almost similar in vein with The Wolf of Wall Street, this is another comedic take on a very surreal true story that kept me thoroughly entertained, as well as wash out the awful residue left behind by the last Tom Cruise vehicle. Even though it leaves off on an inevitable yet really dark note, I had just enough of a blast to give this movie an 8 out of 10 overall. So what do you guys think? Should I do more shortcut reviews in the near future? And what are your thoughts on the new It film? Let us know in the comments below. Feel free to like, share, subscribe. And with that said, our show is now concluded. I'm the host.